right. Good afternoon, everyone. Wow, we're going to do that again. Good afternoon, everyone. Aw, Teacher Nikki. So hi there. For those of you who don't know, I'm Nikki Devitt, and I'm President and CEO of the Petoskey Regional Chamber of Commerce, and I want to thank you for joining us for our annual Housing Town Hall event. The Chamber started this several years ago as a way to inform not just our businesses and our elected officials, but also our community as a whole and where we stand in housing. So we all know that housing shortages are across all price points, not just in Emmet County, but in Michigan and throughout the country. So one of the things that we try to do is help you understand why that's an issue for our community in particular. Not only does it threaten our workforce, but it threatens our communities and what we look like not just now, but in the future. So we love to bring together experts, as we say, to help us understand where we are, how we're growing, what we're doing right, and what we can do more in. And with us this time, we are really trying to make sure that not only we're looking at where we can have that possibility of zoning being a better tool for our developers and our municipalities, why community matters so much, but also celebrating the successes of some projects that we've been talking about, frankly, forever. Because now you can see them, and now you know when they're going to be open for apartment living and how much they're going to cost. And we're going to go over all that with you today. But before we do any of that, we have to thank our sponsors, because for us at the Chamber, it's huge to have the support of our member businesses to make sure that we can bring you these wonderful housing town halls and all the great things that we do at the Chamber to make sure you are informed as a community. So we're going to start off with the generous support of DTE. And so I want to invite Chris Hackbarth to come on up and say a few words. And Chris is the regional manager for Northern Michigan for DTE. So Chris, I'm going to hand this to you.
Thank you, Carlin. There we go. Thank you, Carlin. I'll wash your car later. Appreciate everyone coming today, and Nikki for inviting me. DTE really cares about housing in our communities. We're heavily invested not only in all of your own individual bills, thank you for paying those, but also in growing all of our communities and helping them thrive. DTE has a very extensive network of programs available for our developers as they work with our communities and projects in those communities, as well as your own individual homes and opportunities to save money, improve energy efficiency, save on your bills even. So all of those are important to us, and appreciate the opportunity to be here today and help support this great program and the Chamber.
Thank you very much, Chris. Please give a round of applause for DTE Energy. Another fantastic sponsor of today's event is Comfort Keepers, and Comfort Keepers has long been a supporter of our Hot Topics programming. So Hot Topics, like today's Town Hall, covers anything that is a critical issue for a community. So that could be a candidate forum or an issue on childcare or housing or transportation or what the latest legislature is doing to your taxes or your community. And FYI, I'm teasing because on September 5th, if you own a small business with 10 employees or less and you have not activated your employee handbook or the way that you do your PTO in regards to the new ESTA law, you're running out of time. So Comfort Keepers is graciously sponsoring another event virtual for us to make sure that all of our small businesses are up to date on that. So Russ Knopp, I would love for you to say a few words.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Russ Knopp, and with my wife Leslie, we are the owner of Comfort Keepers. Comfort Keepers provides in-home care for seniors. I'll tell you, housing is vital to any business that has any employees in this region. At Comfort Keepers, we have about 70 employees in the Char-M area, and many of them are impacted by the housing shortage. So it's time to do something about it, some more about it. And I just want to thank the Petoskey Chamber for all of their efforts, for keeping a focus on this, and really putting in the efforts to help projects move forward. So thank you, Nikki.
Thank you so much, Russ. And our last sponsor that I want to thank today is Odawa Casino. Suzanne didn't want to come up here, and that's okay. So Odawa Casino sponsors our Winfluence programming, which is actually kind of the umbrella of most of the programming that the Chamber does, and it's an extremely important thing for us to be able to offer a variety of programming, and Odawa is our year-long sponsor. But Suzanne did tell me that there is a concert Friday at Odawa Casino, David Nail, and they're not quite sold out yet. So in her hot little hands, Suzanne has free tickets to Friday night's David Nail concert at the Odawa Casino. Wave your hands, Suzanne. Okay, so that means if you would like to go see that concert for free, all you have to do is tackle Suzanne at the end of this and get your free tickets. Tackle's not the right way to say it. Ask her nicely. Make sure you say please. And in addition to, I want to give a shout out to Alpine Media and Dewan, who always records our events for us so that those who are not here get to see it. Okay, so the way we're going to kick this off, before I start yakking a little bit more though, is I would love for you to meet your panelists and who's going to speak to you. So Tim, I'm going to start down on the end with you, and if you would just introduce yourself, who you are, who you're with, and then when it's your time to speak, they'll already know you.
Good afternoon. I'm Tim Klont. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the Michigan State Housing Development Authority, or Michigan's State Housing Finance Agency.
Ani Boujou, Melissa Pamp. I am a tribal counselor for the Little Traverse Bay Bands. I am here to speak about Victory Square Apartments. Miigwech for having me today.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah Ford. I'm the Director of Community Philanthropy for the Petoskey Harbor Springs Area Community Foundation, and I'm excited to be here today to give you an update on the lofts at Lumber Square.
Good afternoon. I'm Mac McClelland. I'm an independent brownfield consultant. I'll be talking about the Block project.
Hi, I'm Tammy Dornberg. I'm Emmet County Planning and Zoning Director, and here to talk today about planning and zoning.
I'm Andrea Jacobs. I'm the Director of Operations for Northwest Michigan Habitat for Humanity. We cover Charlevoix, Emmet, and Sheboygan County now, proud to say. I'm here because housing matters, and I'm passionate about it, but I'm also here to talk about the Meadowlands project that we've been finishing up in Alanson.
All right, so you have a great panel, and we want to kick things off. So first and foremost, let's just get back into where are we? You've seen these slides 1,000 times, and that's a good thing. We want you to recognize them. Special thank you to Housing North for making sure that we had this today. So we will hear today a couple different things. You're going to hear statewide housing plan, regional housing partnerships, and Region D. That's us. So that is the 10-county region that encompasses Emmet County. Housing North is who is the Region D lead. And when you look at these numbers in 10 counties, this is a lot. Approximately 300,000 people is what we talk about when we talk about that housing partnership from a statewide plan. And when we drill it down, though, to just Emmet County, and we talk about what are the needs, first understand how big the needs are throughout the entire 10-county region. And I will be the first to say the needs in Grand Traverse County, Kalkaska County, Charlevoix County are very different than those in Emmet County. So we're going to focus strictly on Emmet County today. But when we look at this and we see that the ownership gap and the rental gap is substantial, no matter what AMI, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about that in a minute, no matter where that income range is that we're targeting to try to find available and affordable and accessible housing. One of the other things that we talk about when we drill down all the way is the difference between how many rental units we need and how many for sale units we need. In Emmet County, we know that we need over 3,000 units of housing by 2027. It's almost the end of 2025. Sorry to say that. August is almost gone already. So you have to look at it from a standpoint of, these numbers are estimates of need that we have in our community now. This is not looking at we're expecting to have a huge population influx. This is to meet the needs of the people who currently live and work in Emmet County. And that's a critical thing to remember as we talk about what happens next with housing. So you see a rental gap of 865 units and for sale of over 2,500 units. And you see a lot of numbers on, what is considered affordable. Where are we seeing the need? What are the estimates for where your median income is? What does that mean? How much you make a year and how much your monthly rent can be? So when we're looking at something like rental, which we're focusing mostly on rental today, because that's what our wonderful projects are for the most part. Hey. I said for the most part. We see that if we look at under 50% AMI, so that's a household income range below $41,000, and I'm going to talk more about that, monthly rent range under $1,000, 380 units are needed. And you can come back to this because we are taping this, so I encourage you, after you sit through this today and after you hear from our projects, to come back to this slide. And remember how many units are hitting each of these sectors that we have that are going to be online within the next 6 months or so, realizing that we're not done. I think that's the most important thing I want to really get across is even though we have huge successes to talk about today, we are far from done. We have a long way to go. Yes. And when we talk about AMIs and the challenges, we always talk about between the wage and the cost of housing. In Emmet County, it's no secret how much it costs to purchase a home. It's no secret how long you'll be on a waiting list for an apartment and what the average rent is in our county. And we talk about this because the mismatch between the two is what truly negatively impacts a community. And I often say housing is economic development. Businesses do not thrive and communities that cannot thrive. And communities cannot thrive when your workforce cannot be a part of your community truly. And so a lot of times what we try to do is show some of the averages. So the average individual in our town, let's just call it healthcare support occupations, average salary, $36,000. Their maximum housing budget, according to calculations, is $922. Anybody making $36,000 a year will tell you that's still too high. So keep that in mind. When I say that, these are the numbers that come down when we start talking about how things are estimated. But the median cost of rent a home or rent in Emmet County is $1,800 a month. That doesn't equate. And it goes all the way down the line no matter what occupation we talk about. So looking at a $60,000 salary, maximum housing budget, $1,500. Again, $1,800 to rent in Emmet County. Our construction trades, we can see it over and over again. We could do slides for every occupation, and I will tell you, if you go to Housing North's website, they have a fantastic slide that I didn't have time to include that shows pretty much every occupation in Emmet County and which ones can afford to rent in this county. And it's staggering, and it's not the best thing in the world to see until you look at the folks up here and realize the work that's being done to rectify that. So one thing I want to talk about really quickly, too, is progress, because a lot of what today is progress. 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, when we were sounding the housing alarm for the first time at the chamber, a lot of people looked at us like we were crazy. Like there wasn't a workforce housing problem. Like everything was fine. It took a pandemic and a huge, huge jump in housing availability and housing cost for people to finally understand that we have a problem, that we have a workforce that is unable to live, work, and play in the same beautiful communities that we all do. And when we talk about communities, we have to think of what's our next and what does that look like. And Andrea, I'm going to throw it to you a little bit on this because impact in your community is probably one of the most critical things we could be talking about.
Yeah, thank you, Nikki. All of those are important points, and I think where we're at right now, on the tail end of, maybe in the middle of, having asked our communities, having asked our municipalities and our townships, having asked our community foundations, our philanthropic partners to really step into this space in order to make some of these projects that you will hear about later today, to make those happen, to get those, to the starting line and across the finish line as we move forward. There's a reason why we asked that much of our community and why we need everybody to have some skin in the game. And it's because of that larger scale impact. Yes, it matters to the individual who gets that home or signs that lease and can create an affordable, sustainable home for their family or themselves. But it matters to our community. And when Nikki says things like housing is economic development, housing matters to our economy, to our businesses. If we talk about, we have now that we have some data, and especially on the tail end of what we have done at Habitat is creating a community of 38 homes. We have some real numbers to work with here. We have some large data that we can actually drill down to Emmet County specifically. And just really generically speaking, if we took a development project of $15 million, it's not huge. It's pretty relevant to what we've done at the Meadowlands, what the Lofts maybe was looking like. Maple Block, I think, might be probably bigger than that. But it's a decent-sized development project for Emmet County specifically. In the first year, the first sort of phase of construction, that represents 484 jobs that may already be here or may be sort of grown into our workforce. $22+ million in labor income, $27+ million of contribution to the GDP, and $56 million in output to Michigan's economy. It's not important that you memorize those. It's important that you feel the difference between us spending $15 million and us impacting our community and our larger state by this much. It matters. And so when we talk about things like, say, property taxes or increase, we talk about, TIF projects. That same $15 million project in 1 year, that first construction phase year, represents $207,000 in local taxes, $795,000 in state taxes, and $5 million in federal taxes. Now, that all has to do with not directly from that project. Indirect sort of community connections, as you all understand, economics, and induced impacts toward those totals. But us building here matters here. And it goes a lot farther than just what happens to that project or what happens to those residents. But what does happen to those residents? So the second phase of a housing development is not that relationship with the developer or construction. It really becomes a relationship with the community members. And housing stability, when we talk about between ownership opportunities and rental opportunities, the largest component of that from an impact standpoint is on the affordability, because a housing opportunity that is unaffordable is unsustainable. That means you have to move your family, you have to change. If your rent gets jacked up, you have to shift your situation around. Your kids might have to move schools. All of that kind of stuff negatively impacts our community. So affordability impacts our housing stability, which then directly connects to long-term measurable effects, as we know, on children's health, educational outcomes. 19% are more likely to graduate high school. Kids that live in homes that are owned are 2 times more likely to pursue higher education. It sounds disconnected, but it is very fundamental to how kids are successful behaviorally, nutritionally, educationally in their environment, because they're not disrupted all of the time. And furthermore, 57% of all adults that own their homes are furthering their own education, which leads us into a community impact statement of the schools stabilizing when our housing and our community members are stabilized in their housing opportunities. Our local workforce stabilizes because there's less turnover, but also to the point of furthering our education, they become more valuable and they have a stronger and greater impact in our community here. And then as you're talking about living where you work, you're creating increased demand for localized commercial services, small business opportunities, and long-term success of those small businesses because you have a stable population of people. I want to speak directly to our small community in Alanson. Right now, we have created housing opportunity for 4 individuals in our education system, 2 in the healthcare system, 6 in retail and services, 2 in hospitality, 4 in the trades, and 1 in public safety. So when we were here a couple of years ago thinking and talking about who we're building for and who we're creating space for, it is our community members, our neighbors, our friends. So the third cycle of impact that I'd like to talk to about development is much quicker, but the idea of the phase 3 as housing stock ages. Once we have it built, it's a part of our community, it's been a part of our community, housing stock ages, it becomes naturally occurring affordable housing. It, just like the lifespan of the resident or the person there, it changes as time goes by, which means it maybe increases demand for local small business trades support. It naturally creates market movement when the residents have differing housing needs, and we get that kind of cycle through. Like I said before, people need 4 different kinds of houses in the span of their lifetime, not just one. So thinking about those kind of impacts to the community overall is a really important point when we've asked everyone to step into this space and to really put some skin in the game and to really invest into our needs. This is the kind of impact that we're talking about when we say, we need this. We have to have this for our community to sustain and to survive and to really thrive.
She gives it back to me. I think what's important to take, I know, and you can clap for that, everybody. Thank you. Because it is important. I mean, it truly is. It's impact. It's not just, it's so much more than just housing. And when we look now at, this slide says, there's 937 projects in Emmet County. Don't be, how do I say this? It's amazing that we have 937 projects in Emmet County that are in the works. But I will also tell you this, as you're going to learn from each and every one of our project speakers, it takes so long to get these across the board. And there's a reason why it does. And you're going to learn a little bit about that too. So when you're thinking community impact numbers and you're thinking, I don't want my community to grow, please always remember, this isn't about growth. This is about sustainability. And as Andrea speaks to, when Meadowlands has, opportunities for, our public safety officers, our housing, our nurses, our healthcare, our education, think about that when we start talking about the rental space too, as we're going to talk today. And when you're looking at, there's a red one on there. Don't ask me about it. When you're looking at kind of where the building is, where the funding is, development, pre-development, there's so much and there's so much potential, but at any point, those can stall and they can turn red. And there's a reason why. And Tammy will talk a little bit about that and why zoning and master planning is so important. So we're kind of setting you all up for that. I encourage you I'm a QR code lover in PowerPoints because I know you can't type that fast. So if you're going to have your phones out, then definitely scan a bunch of QR codes today. This one is for Housing North's website. Great opportunity for you to see and keep track of what's going on in the county and the 10-county region as a whole. It's super, super, super important. So now I'm going to kick it over to my very good friend Tim with MSHDA, because I think that for us to fully grasp Emmet County, we have to understand what's going on in the state. From a top level. And I'm very biased to MSHDA for a lot of reasons. For those who don't know, I do serve on the statewide housing partnership appointed by the governor. So I have to say that I love MSHDA. Just kidding. But I do. And I love what the state is doing and really truly embracing that we have a problem and looking to address it and being flexible in addressing it. So Tim, it's all you.
Thanks, Nikki. So again, Tim Clont, Chief Operating Officer with the Michigan State Housing Development Authority, where we say housing is our middle name. Right, okay. Pause there for the chuckle. But MSHDA, so again, Michigan State Housing Finance Agency. And a lot of people don't know who we are and what we do. Somewhat of a financing Oz behind the curtain, if you will. So, Nikki, are you going to do my slides? Thanks. I would do them myself, but I'm sure one additional hand. But let me just speak a little bit about what we do. We are all things housing for Michigan, all things housing production and preservation, everything from emergency shelter through home ownership. Just to toot our own horn a little bit, in 2022, which was a really busy year for us, even though it was a few years ago, we deployed about $750 million statewide to support the housing, or to support the production and preservation and purchase of affordable housing. And then the next year, we surpassed $1 billion, which was our most productive year ever. And well, wait, because there's more. Oh, actually, we'll take that. But in 24, we doubled it. $2.1 billion deployed across the state. Right? Thank you. But now, much of that, as I'll speak about, is through partners like we have up here on the stage. But $2.1 billion, significant investment, but we're still in a housing crisis. The $2.1 billion today makes us the third largest financial institution based in Michigan. Okay? We are a state agency, about 60 years old, but we are a self-supporting state agency. Of that $2.1 billion, only about 2% of those dollars actually came from state general fund. Okay? We make a lot of our own money, and we operate a lot of federal programs as well. So that's where a lot of our funding comes from. That $2.1 billion, about $1 billion of that was first mortgages. We run a very successful, very busy first mortgage program for income-eligible home buyers. Those are for the individuals making up to 120% of the area median that Nikki spoke about. If you're in the home buying market or know someone who is, that's important to know because every mortgage we provide comes with $10,000 of down payment assistance that can be paired with other down payment assistance resources. So that's a big part of what we do. About another $750 million of that $2.1 billion is the financing of affordable multifamily housing. We are a lender. In fact, today, we are lending on 1 out of every 3 new multifamily units being built in Michigan right now. Okay? So a big lender. And another big line of business for us, if you will, many of you have probably heard of the Section 8 program, today called Housing Choice Voucher. MSHDA operates the largest statewide Housing Choice Voucher program in the country. Every month, we pay a portion of the rent on behalf of more than 30,000 households. Okay? So of that $2.1 billion or so, last year, about $118 million of that was right here in Region D, the 10 counties that Nikki referenced, and more specifically, about $7.5 million of that right here in Emmet County.
Clap for that, please.
Oh, yeah. Well, again, I mean, you should be clapping for some others in the room as well, because I see some of our partners who regularly access our resources to create the housing opportunities. So let's talk about some headwinds in Michigan. We are in a housing crisis, and it is not, I think some elements, some parts of it are unique to Michigan, but Michigan is not unique to the rest of the country. So quite simply, too many people can't afford housing, whether they're trying to rent it or they're trying to buy it. I'm going to run through just some stats that I think are, some of them pretty sobering, some of them very telling. In the 90s, which I'm not proud to admit, I remember very well, the median age of the first-time homebuyer, 28. Today, 38. 10 years older. Now, we can all speculate as to why, but I bet a good reason of that is the cost of housing and the amount of time it takes to save for a down payment, right? Now, in the 80s, so going back just a little bit further, the median age of all home buyers, so first time and repeat, 36. Today, 56. So what that's telling us is that people are waiting longer to maybe move along the housing continuum, either buy the next bigger house or downsize, right, at 56 maybe. So because it's taking longer, it's limiting the movement across that continuum for folks who are trying to get into the market. In Michigan, more than half of renters spend more than 30% of their monthly income on housing. That makes them housing insecure, okay? And that's just housing. That's not car, childcare, healthcare, student loan payments, anything like that, right? 30% is significant. Now, between 2012 and 2022, so a 10-year period, the average sales price of a house in Michigan doubled, but yet our incomes only went up about 40%. Right? So that's also contributing to the housing crisis. Incomes just are not rising at the same rate of the cost of housing. We also have an aging housing stock in Michigan. More than half of our housing stock is more than 50 years old. And I love a good historic home, right? But a lot of homes of this age, functionally obsolete, energy inefficient, inaccessible for or lack the accessibility features for the people who need them. And also, people just lived differently 50 years ago. Houses tended to be larger. So we have a lot of people who are simply overhoused because there isn't a housing option for them to move into. And then I will go ahead and move to the next slide.
There we go. Something you and I talked about before that I want to talk about is we're talking about these massive shortages. We're talking about we don't have enough supply. It's aged. Obviously, we know the rates don't matter to what people make. But I think it's really important because we hear a lot in Michigan, and we can all admit it, that, our population is not increasing. In fact, it's decreasing, and we're not growing, and that's a scary thing for us. So how is it that we're not growing, but yet we have a housing shortage?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Fortunately, I'm prepared to answer it because it's one I get often, right? Stagnant population. So how are we all of a sudden in a housing crisis? One, it's not all of a sudden, but it is in relative, I would say probably significantly maybe within the last 8 to 10 years. And it's for a number of reasons. One, we simply fell behind in housing production. Our housing production was meeting demand, and then it fell off of a cliff. For a few reasons. We have an aging, skilled trades labor force that is not being replenished at the same rate that individuals are leaving it. The cost, just the raw cost of building a home, anything from the site to the infrastructure to the lumber to the labor, is increasingly cost prohibitive. But probably one of the most significant factors in today's housing shortage when speaking about the stagnant population is about, let's say 30 years or so ago, the average household size was about 4 people. Today, 2.2 people. So even if we don't have another person move into Michigan, again, which we know is not going to happen, right? We simply need more housing to accommodate the households. Right? So it's not about the number of people necessarily in the state. It's about the number of households in the state. And we have significantly more households today than what we have had in recent years.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I knew that was important.
That's okay. A few years ago, we started working on Michigan's very first statewide housing plan. We consulted with and engaged about 7,000 individuals and communities and small businesses and other allies around the state to help us develop what today has become MISHDA's strategic plan. It guides our programming and our investments across the state. The statewide housing plan, which Nikki's dropped a QR code to, is robust and comprehensive. It's 8 priorities, 37 goals, and 134 strategies. So there's something in there for everyone. But one of the production targets in the statewide housing goal at the time was for us, a challenge to us to produce or preserve 75,000 units of housing. Now, when the statewide housing plan was published, we had a 190,000 unit housing deficit in the state. So we knew that even if we hit that 75,000 units over 5 years, we're still going to be in a deficit. It was a stretch goal. And we were doing really great. And then about 2 years into the plan, so last year, the governor moved the goalpost on us a little bit, and she said, now 115,000 units. So that's our new goal. It's ambitious, but with the help of our partners, we are optimistic. To help us implement the statewide housing plan, Nikki mentioned regional housing partnerships. We've divided the state into 15 geographic regions because we know that economies and housing markets are regional. And so we are working in and with 15 regional housing partnerships across the state. And we are committed to directing or prioritizing our funding for the highest priorities within those individual regions. Every region has a regional action plan. Some say, we're going to prioritize home ownership, others rental, some new construction, some rehab, some ending homelessness, some senior housing. That's okay. Whatever that regional action plan says for that region, we are committed to aligning our funding for that. If you ever want to know how this particular region is doing or how we're doing as a state, that QR code also takes you to quarterly progress reports, where you can see for this region how much money has MSHDA invested in the last quarter, how many housing units have been permitted, and how many of them were for sale or were for multifamily. So lots of good information because we're also committed to data-driven decisions. Okay, so where are we today on our 115,000 unit goal? We're about 65% there. As of last month, we have hit 72,000 units of housing permitted across the state. Significant. Again, optimistic we're going to hit the 115, but we know that that's not going to close the gap. Last slide. So I was asked to say just a word about some of our new programming, and I'm only going to touch on one in particular. We like to think, and we believe that we're constantly innovating and trying to be as responsive as we can to what we're hearing in the regions and across the state. We are also always looking to engage other sectors in solving the state's affordable housing crisis. There's this first bullet is a stat that really jumped out to us and got us thinking about what is now known as the Employer Assisted Housing Fund. Nikki spoke briefly about economic development and job growth. Today in Michigan, for every 14 jobs that are created, every new 14 jobs, we are creating one housing unit. One, right? So we're already in a housing crisis. And we want to grow the economy, right? We want new jobs. New jobs are great. But for every 14, one housing unit. So we created the Employer Assisted Housing Fund to really engage some of those employers in helping us solve the affordable housing crisis. This is a pilot program. We piloted it with $10 million. And we said, we'll do a dollar for dollar match to any employer who contributes cash or equity or maybe land, the value of land, to create local housing solutions for the workforce. Now, it's not only for the employer's workforce, right? It's for anyone in that area who otherwise qualifies for the housing. It could be a project or it could be a program. So very flexible. And to date, we've committed $5 million for 2 projects. So that's actually going to be development. And then we've committed about $1.4 million for 4 programs. Okay? So we still have money available. In fact, one of those programs I'm going to mention is right here in Petoskey. Manti.
Yep.
Manti, wood products. They came to us and they said, you know, we really want to focus on employee recruitment and retention, and we want to help our employees buy a home that's closer to work. So they came to us with a pledge for a cash contribution into a down payment assistance fund of almost $500,000. We said we'll match it dollar for dollar. So now they have $1 million of down payment assistance available to their income eligible employees to help them purchase a home closer to where they work, right? It's a great return on investment for us because it's a 1-to-1, right? And it's a way for us to engage a business that probably we would not have been on their radar otherwise. We are optimistic that this program will continue beyond the pilot. There is a $25 million request in the governor's budget for this particular program. So I'm looking for some wood when we do get a state budget. I am hopeful that this program appears in there so that we can continue to leverage the dollars across the state.
Thank you so much, Tim. And I think that it's really important that we will give everybody's contact information for you, because if there are employers in the audience who maybe haven't heard of the Employer Assisted Housing Fund and are thinking that you might have a program or project or a way to help your employees in your community, it's a dollar for dollar match. And you are all being very creative at MISHDA to find ways to make this work. So it's just one more, option for us. And we know that Northern Michigan was kind of, I want to say, the inventor of employers fixing housing problems. We bought hotels. We've done all kinds of things in Northern Michigan to make sure that our employees had a place to live. So thank you to MISHDA. So thank you, Tim, very much. So we're going to jump in now to our projects. But before we do that, I wanted to kind of do a little bit of as high-level explanation of AMI as I can, because we talk a lot about different AMI percentages when we're talking about these projects. First and foremost, one of the things I cannot express enough about the 3 projects we're going to talk about today is how serendipitous it is that we have 3 different projects coming online within about 6 months of each other of completion, and we are hitting everything from the lowest to market rate. That is absolutely, positively critical to tackle the housing supply and crisis and shortage, because we know that the needs are across the board. It's not just in one. So AMI, area median income, which we talk about all the time in the housing world, it should really be known as it's the midpoint of household earnings. So household, meaning whether you have 1 or 2 or 4 income earners in that household. So half of the household's going to earn more than what the AMI is, and half are going to earn less. It's not an average, which means in counties like Emmet, where we have, let's be honest, a very high discrepancy between the top earner and the lowest earner, that median income, while it's a standard, also doesn't, for a lot of folks, they look at it sometimes and go, well, wait a minute, that doesn't work for me. That kind of explains why it doesn't always work. But because it doesn't work is why we have incredible programs like the Community Foundation, Habitat, MISHDA funds, and so many others working to help offset that. So when we look at the affordable, what it's designed for, what it's defined as, and as Tim said, when you have more than 40% or 30% of our population in Michigan paying way more than they should for housing, and in Emmet County, it's 50%. Yeah, it's too much. It's such a burden for people for so many reasons. So a lot of times when you hear that AMI, when we're going to talk about it today, what you're going to see is these are kind of the household incomes that we see for each of the cost range or each of the ranges, and then that maximum affordability. So keep in mind, I don't know about you, but if somebody says the maximum you can afford is $1,600, well, just because it's the maximum I can afford doesn't mean it's what I can truly afford. And so that is a big piece of the housing conversation, and that's why we're highlighting 3 projects that are really working with that and have good intention to work with that. So I think that's just kind of one thing I want to make sure that we get out there to kick things off. So now I want to start with our first project, which is Victory Square. And Melissa's going to take this, and I want everybody to know that up until about 40 hours ago, Melissa did not know she was doing this today. Thank you. Because that's a big deal. I think that's what we got, like about 40 hours, maybe not even 48.
Yeah, Monday afternoon.
Yeah. So thank you to Melissa, and I'm going to let you take it away, and I'll catch you if we want to dig any deeper on anything. So please tell us about Victory Square.
Well, thank you for having the tribe be here to represent and to speak about our housing. Currently, you can go to the next slide if you'd like. So Victory Square development is the result of a collaboration between the Odawa Economic Development Management Incorporated, non-gaming economic development arm of the Little Traverse Bay Bands of Odawa Indians, and California-based affordable housing provider Hunt Capital Partners. The collaboration also includes Community Housing Network, CHN, out of Troy, Michigan, which serves as the project's developer. Those are all the logos of all the fiduciary, like the finance. The tribe has put in some money. That is the construction company, MISTA has been a big part of our project. You can switch to the next slide if you'd like. So the history, this was made possible, this started a long time ago. So the closing of Victory's Casino back in 2007 and the forethought of the former OEDMI board of directors, they came up with a lifestyle concept to diversify the revenue streams to the tribe. First, the Victory Square Phase 1 project constructed a 139-room courtyard Marriott, and we have over 15,000 square feet of commercial space, which is included for high-profile tenants like Starbucks, T-Mobile. We have Tropical Smoothie, Great Clips, and Buffalo Wild Wings. Phase 1 was completed in 2019. And if you could see some of the timeline here, in 2020, the Tribal Council they approved the submission of a application to the MISTA. July 15th, we received notification that we were recipients of, I believe it was 1 million. A little over 1 million to that. October 13th, the building construction started. And then last year, September 9th, we had our closing done for that. And then in November of this year, we plan to have a 50-unit workforce housing development. It is located at the southern gateway of Petoskey, off from US 31. It features 5 studios, 32 one-bedrooms, 12 two-bedroom units, which 5 of those will be fully accessible, and the remaining will be adaptable. There is an elevator in the building for the ease of access. It was developed on trust lands, and 8 units will be, you can actually, to the next slide.
Here we go.
It was developed on trust land, and 8 of our units will be set aside for our citizens, specifically for that. The tribe recognizes the housing crisis, and the goal is to assist in providing affordable housing and accessibility. The units are close to the stores, downtown, public transportation, the bus stop, and the tribal clinic is located right behind that. The units will feature dishwashers, garbage disposals, microwaves, washer and dryer connections, Energy Star kitchen appliances, LED lighting, walk-in closets, some exterior storage, central air conditioning for those hot days. Residents will also have access to a community room, fitness center, bike racks. There will be on-site management, Wi-Fi accessibility into the public areas. I found it interesting that the water, sewer, and trash removal will be included in those prices. So I think that's very helpful to have that included into the price.
And what slide do you want me to be on here? This one? If we're going to talk
Probably. Yeah, we could talk a little bit about the AMI and the rental rates. So this was given to me by the project manager, and these are the rental rates that are anticipated at the 30, 40, and 80%.
So this is where it gets important when we talk about hitting all spectrums. And we're going to get to a QR code for application on all 3 of these projects so that you can make sure that you're staying informed, depending on what you are sharing with someone else or what your needs may be. And I want to say too, to Melissa, when she was explaining, I think it's really important, first and foremost, that everybody understands the efforts the tribe went through to get this project. It's also a LIHTC project, and to most people in the room, that means nothing to you. It's a low-income housing tax credit, and it's really hard to get them. There's no other way to say it. It's really hard. It's really hard in Emmet County and Petoskey in particular because, and so you don't have to worry, I'm going to yell MEDC now. MEDC scores based on walkability a lot. And Lofts at Lumber Square even applied for LIHTC and couldn't get it. Not because it's not a great project, because it couldn't meet the state standards. And the tribe did not give up, and they pushed so hard to get that LIHTC funding because that's what allows this. That's what allows that type of area median income that we can target. That is what gives us the ability through the state to be able to fund not just market rate, not just 80 to 120, but hitting that workforce need across the spectrum. So I think those rental rates are extremely, extremely important when we talk about what can our community afford. And so I cannot say enough how important it is that the tribe stuck with this and did not give up on this. So thank you for that.
You guys. If you'd like to go to the slide with the financials, I can kind of go over the financials a little bit.
Yeah, let's go over this one. That one?
Yeah, so Victory Square was financed in part with $13 million in 9% federal low-income housing tax credits awarded by the MISHDA. And they're being syndicated by the Hunt Capital Partners through one of its multi-investor funds. OUDMI, our economic arm, has provided $5 million of funds with a combination from the tribe. The tribe has put in a little over $3 million. They also were a recipient of the Shakopee Madakwin Sioux Community Grant in MISHDA. They were also a recipient of $448,000 for the Affordable Housing Program grant through the Federal Loan Bank of Indianapolis. The project's development total cost was $15,353,907, of which the tax credit investment was put forth at $9,905,807. So it has been not just the tribe, but it's been a collaboration of many arms to have this come forward. And it's important to recognize the tribal support of another nation. We are grateful to be recipients of the Shakopee Community Grant funding. I think that's a good start for tribes to help other tribes if you have the means and the capability to do that. Victory Square is a reminder that progress is possible when we prioritize people and partnerships. It's not just a development, it's a collaboration. I'm really excited to see what the future brings. There is importance to maintaining relationships. My fellow counselor, Marty Vandekarba, he recognized the importance of bridging our two communities. And so I just want to thank him. I did channel him a little bit today, so just Chimagwech for your time. And I do have on the other slides our application process.
There we go.
The application process, and then there's a couple QR codes.
Get to that.
That's what the building looks like. The
This
QR code in the
behind
right-hand
Andrew's head.
corner is a Facebook, and it has pictures and updates from the management company.
Behind Andrea's head is the pictures, and then this one is the how to apply, and then a little bit more about what they're going to look like. And again, can't say enough about the collaboration of this, and then the incomes that it's targeting, but also that of the 50 units, the majority are being offered to our entire community. So once again, as you said, Chimagwech, very much. It's incredible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah, it's you.
Good afternoon again. My name is Sarah Ford with the Petoskey Harbor Springs Area Community Foundation, and it is my great privilege to talk to you a little bit today about the lofts at Lumber Square. So just to center those of you who haven't heard about the lofts at Lumber Square, this is located on the corner of Emmet and Fulton Streets in Old Town Emmet neighborhood, right near where the greenway ends that takes you to downtown Petoskey. So I thought I would start off with a little bit of a project timeline, and Melissa touched on this a little bit, and I think even Tim did too, but just the length of time that it takes for a project to get to the stage where there's actually folks who can live there, right? So the pre-development project runway is long. So this project stems back to at least early 2020, I think probably 2019. I'm looking at Corey because he was involved with this project back then, with GA Hahn Development. Hahn had been exploring, doing their due diligence on property, the old Hankey lumber site, the Grueller property, whatever you refer to it as. They had been doing their due diligence there, and in early 2020 entered into a purchase agreement with the owner, Al Grueller, to purchase that property. They then went through the city approvals, got approval from the city to construct a 60-unit multifamily apartment building. And part of that process was the approval of a payment in lieu of taxes. So right off the bat, the city was very supportive of this project. And I guess even before that, the city had identified this property as a redevelopment ready property, meaning that they had prioritized this site for redevelopment, which turned out to be very helpful down the road because it did open the door to a number of different funding opportunities. So I'm sure Corey's like cringing over there about my timeline because my dates might be a little bit off, but in February of 2021, the same time that this tribe applied for the low-income housing tax credit, the lofts at Lumber Square also applied for the low-income housing tax credits. Unfortunately, in July, our project was notified that it was not successful in getting those tax credits. The community foundation that's when we entered the project. And we knew of this project because of our work with the Little Traverse Bay Housing Partnership. The work of the Little Traverse Bay Housing Partnership had introduced us to this project, and we knew that it was super important for our community, that we needed this housing project to continue to go forward. So we reached out to Hahn and said, hey, what can we do to keep this project going? We don't want you to walk away from it. We know that it's really disappointing that the LIHTC didn't come through. What can we do? So we entered into some discussions with them. Many, many months later, the Community Foundation got assigned the purchase agreement to secure the property for workforce housing. And we just thought, okay, that will be a good first step. We'll make sure that the property is secured. It's a very highly desirable location, and we want to make sure that that's the purpose that it's used for. And then by May of 2022, the Community Foundation had raised almost $500,000 to purchase the property, thanks to generous support of our community members. And at the same time, the number of programs were being announced by the state that said, the MEDC had the Revitalization and Placemaking Program announced, and that was a funding opportunity. And because the project had already been in development, had already had all this legwork done by Hahn Development, we were able to apply for that funding and kind of got the ball rolling. Sort of said, let's just go after it, we'll figure it out later, which turned out to be a lot of figuring out along the way, but but we did it. But I just want to really underscore that the project was under development. The project had this vision by Hahn Development, and because of the partnership and the relationship that had been born through the Little Traverse Bay Housing Partnership, we were able to keep the project alive when the initial funding source fell through. So go ahead to the next slide, Nikki. This is a slide similar project partners that the Victory Square has, but some different ones. The two at the top are Hahn Development, and our other partner on this project is Northern Homes Community Development Corporation. So Hahn Development stayed in the project as a development consultant, and we are eternally grateful to the work that they've done on this project because they've really managed the day-to-day of the construction. Northern Homes, if those of you who are not familiar, is run by Jane McKenzie. It's a nonprofit housing entity that is mission-driven to provide and preserve affordable housing. And we really felt as a community foundation that it was important to have a nonprofit be the owner. Hahn actually also really felt that it was important for it to be a nonprofit owner. And the community foundation did not want to own the project. We are not a housing development entity, and we have no business managing apartments. So we felt like this was a really good deal. Wolverine Building Group is the construction manager, Hooker DeYoung is the architect, and then our funding partners are First Community Bank, IFF, MEDC, MISHDA, and then we have Eagle Grant, Emmet County Brownfield, and the city of Petoskey also is involved in that. So the Community Foundation, we've received a lot of attention for this project, but it would not be possible without the day-to-day management of our two partners, Han and Northern Homes. We kind of get a lot of pats on the back, but I really want to take this moment to pat them on the back because they really have been keeping this project going, keeping track of all the funding, working on the construction management, handling the hiccups and the unexpected barriers along the way, which there have been a few. And I also really think it's important to lift up developers because people often think that developers are getting rich off the incentives and grants that are being given to these projects. But I've seen the pro forma for the lofts at Lumber Square, and no one's getting rich off this project. I can assure you that. The truth is that these various incentives and state funding are just absolutely necessary in order to deliver projects that even serve our middle income earners. The other important thing to note, I think, is that not only do the numbers have to work out financially to just construct the building, but it needs to create enough income so that we don't have a dilapidated building 10, 15, 20 years from now. So I guess I just want to dispel this myth that developers are taking advantage of community incentives to their benefit. It's just not my experience working with these two entities and being involved in a lot of other conversations about projects that are happening off the ground. The communities that want housing that meets their needs of their residents, we need to be prepared to step to the plate and invest in it. And in our current environment, it will not happen without it, especially in resort communities like ours. So I just got to get off my soapbox there for a second, but I felt like I'm going to take this opportunity to go to bat for our developer friends because
I'm so glad
it's really important.
Please do that. Thank you.
Yeah, I really just, I hear that a lot, that we can't give tax breaks or we can't give tax incentives, we can't do this because, it's just lining the pockets of somebody. And it's just not my experience of the projects that I'm aware of in our community. So this project, the total project cost was just over $18 million. It increased from $16 million initially. So that tells you, how things change, especially during the COVID years. Our state funding includes an MBDC revitalization and placemaking grant, a community revitalization program grant and a loan, the MISHDA Missing Middle program, a brownfield tax increment financing plan, and an EAGLE grant for some additional soil remediation that was discovered after the project was underway. We also have a first loan from First Community Bank, and I just really want to give a shout out to our local regional bank for their vision and belief in the need for a project like this. When he first spoke to Daniel Clark there, he immediately jumped in an uncertain lending environment. They stepped right to the plate, right out of the gate and committed to this project. So really a shout out and kudos to our local banking partner there. The project also has a loan from IFF. IFF, for those of you who aren't familiar, is a fantastic community development finance institution that is investing in housing across Michigan, and they've been a great partner on this project as well. And then the final piece that was critical to this project in order to keep the rents affordable that I'm going to talk about in a moment was philanthropy, and that's where the Community Foundation comes in. We were raising a total of $4 million toward this $18 million project. $500,000 of that was for land acquisition, and then $3.55 in philanthropy to basically fill that funding gap so that we could keep those rents affordable. We've had more than 400 individuals and foundations support this project with gifts from $10 to $500,000. So while the Community Foundation, we may get the credit for raising that money, the community really deserves that credit. That is the people across our community who stepped up and recognized the need for housing and gave whatever they could, whatever was meaningful to them, that deserve the support or deserve the credit for this. So thank you for showing up and showing your support for the lofts. A little bit about the project details. So similar to what Melissa was talking about, these units are really designed to really thoughtfully designed, intentionally designed to accommodate roommates with common areas located in the center. They have all the modern amenities, including washer and dryer in the unit. There's on-site storage. I just learned the other day there's going to be some additional interior bike storage for to encourage non-motorized transportation. We always hear about traffic and parking during our summer months especially, so encouraging some use of that greenway that's right next to the project. Again, it is 61 2 and 3 bedroom units. They are all 2 bathroom, and these are reserved for middle income households earning between 80 to 120% of AMI. The income that you need to qualify to live here is $40,000 to $120,000, and rents will be priced between $1,250 and $1,650. Again, it's owned and operated by Northern Homes Community Development Corporation. They're a mission-driven organization that will remain committed to maintaining affordability, but just to ensure that it remains affordable, there is also a 50-year deed restriction that ensures its purpose remains to serve households between 80 and 120% of AMI. Of those rents, I should note there are a handful of units. If you look on the website, there are a handful of units. They're priced up to $1,690. Those are some more premium units, third floor with a bit of a view, that type of thing. But for the majority of those are that $1,250 to $1,650. And similar to Victory Square, they include water, sewer, and garbage in that rental, and then residents are responsible for the electricity and the internet. So pre-leasing is happening now. That process, there is, I think, about 150 people who have already put in a pre-lease application, so showing a great demand for this project. And the formal applications will be available probably within the next few weeks. We need to make sure that people are income qualified within 120 days of move-in due to some of our funding requirements. So construction is expected to be completed by the end of October, with folks being able to move in as soon as the end of November or December. So it's really just been an amazing thing to be a part of, to see the need being met by this one project, and also recognizing, I mean, I'll be real, recognizing that it's not the only thing that we need, right? It's not going to meet the needs for everybody in our community, and I think that's why it's so great that we have a variety of different projects that we're highlighting tonight, because or I guess it's not nighttime yet, but
Slow it down.
that highlighting the different projects that meet across the spectrum, because we know that we have need across income levels, and this has just been a really valuable project to be a part of. So that's all I have.
Thank you so much, Sarah. We're going to pass the clicker now for Mac to do his.
Thank you. I'm Mac McClelland, and I wanted to keep this short, but Nikki said she wanted more slides. So maybe not there. So
even me. No.
And I'm afraid I got to stand here so I remember what I was supposed to say. So thank you. I'm Mac McClelland. I'm an independent brownfield consultant. I played a small role in this project. There's a whole lot that's going on, as you'll see, for the project. It's pretty incredible. But I've been doing this for about 27 years, done about 100 brownfield projects, and this is one of the most complex that I've ever gone through, so not to mention all of the other things. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about brownfield conditions and why it was difficult on this project, on this particular project. It has everything, all the checklist of brownfield conditions. I'm sorry. I'm going to talk a little bit about the project, talk a little bit about the financing and the challenges that come through. This is a developer-led project, and I can also attest, I've seen the pro formas. They're not making a lot of money on this project at all. But it was really important to come through and invest in the opportunity there. And a little bit about the lessons learned that we've had. Going backwards? There you go. Yep, thanks. So it's been talked about, this was a priority site, and so the community got together and identified, the city and the county identified this as a site. And Tammy and I worked together a little bit in trying to get things rolling on it, to get some of the environmental reports going. Just kind of got stonewalled a little bit in moving that forward. But because the community identified this as a site, it opened up a whole lot of opportunities here for MEDC and for other folks to contribute. And MEDC and the Brownfield Authority paid for some of the upfront cost that developers are not willing to do right away. They're pretty expensive. Geotechnical analysis to see what the building foundations have to be like, the environmental analysis, asbestos surveys of the existing building, those kinds of things were supported by MEDC and the Brownfield Authority. That made a big difference in the project. It has everything on this project: asbestos, demolition, major industrial facility, unstable soils. You can't build a regular building on it without special foundations, and widespread contamination across the site that really affected the construction. So it checked all the boxes. And the river. Yes, we also had to accommodate the Bear River and the setbacks and the issues related to that, especially with the environmental work as well. In all of that, the environmental conditions, both the soils and the environmental conditions, really require a whole lot of special construction. The construction folks that we worked with were great at dealing with the buildings, but also we had to have vapor mitigation systems in each of the buildings because there was a potential for vapor to come in. And so that coordination of construction to put in the vapor mitigation systems really required a whole lot of coordination for that. And really, as we talked about, the fact is that the cost to construct these projects and the revenues to come in, there's a gap to that. That's got to be filled by outside sources. There's just no way with construction cost and the revenues that are available to build these projects. And so they do not happen without the collaboration and coordination of all folks involved there. And of course, multiple grant opportunities, incentives were pursued and secured, but that increases the complexity of the project as well. Each of those have their own stipulations to work through, progress reports, all of that. So it really becomes a complex process. And as always, they take longer than anticipated to get going. And while you're in them, stuff comes up. There's another word for that. Stuff happens, I think, something like that. That really requires some flexibility to be able to manage that as well. So the project is located on the Bear River, south of town, in kind of a transition area, according to the master plan, I believe, and with strong support to move from industrial to more multiple uses for the property. It was just a small, 200,000 square foot industrial property that had been operated since the 1880s. I'm sure nothing happened there, so no real problems. 100-year-old building that was there had significant asbestos throughout the building that had to be abated as part of that. Again, widespread contamination all over the site due to the historic operations and fill materials that had come onto that site as well. And then, as I mentioned, unstable soils. The geotechnical showed that you couldn't build these buildings without special foundations, stone piers and stone columns that had to be done for each of the buildings. These are all additional costs. I mean, rather than just a vacant piece of land, had to deal with all of these costs without having any economic value to that. So important to address that. It was a lovely building. We're sad to see it go, but glad to see it move from that and move into a pretty incredible housing development there. So this is Great Lakes Capital, and I think that, and I'm sorry, I'm here for Jeff Smoke, who is the developer and owner of Great Lakes Capital. He probably rused the day when Dan Leonard at MEDC said, "Hey, I got a site for you. Come on in." And so, but they're a incredible development company based in South Bend with extensive experience, 50 projects over 9 states. So they brought in a lot of development experience, which is really important in this particular project as well. They teamed with J.B. Donaldson, a 100-year-old construction company. So the fact that we had a strong developer, strong construction company was critical to the project. There's 7 buildings, along with a future commercial building that's up on the northeast side of that. There'll be 204 total units. 102 of those units are going to be targeted to the 120 AMI households or less. And then 25 of those units are going to be targeted at 100 AMI or less. So this is kind of a mix of a project, not all AMI, but really we're able to balance the AMI capabilities and capacities with some market rate as well. Just a small investment of $46 million on the project. So pretty incredible, I think, processes. The folks who had done these projects have experienced similar projects in Traverse City and throughout, so they're well experienced in kind of providing the product for that. And just a couple of shots of kind of progress. This is sort of when the building came down, and it was a nice and easy cleanup that was involved there in taking all of that stuff down. A few surprises after we got done. As a matter of fact, quite a bit of grading work. The site was relatively flat, but still a little bit of grading work. A lot of soils work had to be done as well. a lot of infrastructure installed. And this is a fairly recent shot of the three buildings, the three apartment buildings in the clubhouse that are underway and well underway. The first building is pretty close to done. So here's the long list. I have about 7 slides of the project incentives that were done for this project. The first, and thank you, Tim, was a missing middle grant, really critical to that. One of the complications to that, however, is that it required Eagle approval of what was called a response activity plan. And so in this case, Eagle has to agree to every single item that's going to be done with respect to all of the environmental activities. And so that's a real process to make sure that all of those things are handled, documentation of due care, a whole another process that MISTA required that may not have been required in other circumstances, but MISTA required for their funding, an important factor as well. Also got a blight elimination grant, about $1 million blight elimination grant from the State Land Bank Authority through the Emmet County Land Bank Authority that helped deal with the abatement, or really covered the abatement and demolition on the project. That also was a significant process with a whole lot of documentation involved. Eagle grant and loan, Brownfield grant and loan. That again requires detailed work plans, review by Eagle of all the activities that are going to be happening, bids over all items of $20,000 or more, and a whole process to be involved. And then there was also a loan, but the loan had to be secured by a letter of credit. So we were able to get $1 million loan through the city of Petoskey, but the city says, hey, we don't want to be stuck if you make all those payments and do that, so we want a letter of credit for that. So Great Lakes Capital had to get a letter of credit to secure that loan as well. Also got a MEDC Community Revitalization Program loan as well that helped support it. And we were the first to do a residential housing property tax exemption through the city as well that provided, there are lots of industrial or some commercial rehabilitation act tax abatements, but this is the first residential housing property tax exemption. And we used, finally, to cap it off, we used brownfield tax increment financing. I won't go into the details of that, but that takes the increased value of the property and the increased taxes that are paid to help reimburse some of these extraordinary costs over time. And we were the first MISTA housing TIF project in the state as well. So it's always easy to be the first one going through a state process, right, Tim? So, no, I tell you, MISTA has been great. This is a new tool for brownfields as well that I'll just take a minute. It used to be that they would cover lead and asbestos abatement, demolition, maybe site preparation or infrastructure and environmental activities in some communities, in all communities. But this now provided an opportunity for these projects, for these affordable projects, to cover the gap between the development and the financing. So it no longer is these hard costs of things, more as an economic development tool and a financial analysis to see what that gap is and to see how TIF can support that. So a very incredible tool that has come about in the last couple of years. So here's a whole lot of numbers. This is all of the values. Incredible support from MISTA. $7 million, $1 million in each of those items, CRP loan, the housing exemption and the brownfield TIF are sort of the value of those exemptions over time. But if you look, the state provided incredible support to that. Of the incentives that are available, 70% of the incentives come from the state. So incredible opportunity to bring state resources into the community to help support that, matched by 40% or 30% by the city, county, and others in the project. So it was again, mostly privately financed, $36 million in equity and financing, public grants of about $9 million, and public loans of $3 million for that. So 3 buildings and the clubhouse are under construction. The first building is anticipated to be ready about November 1st, just about the time that the first loft is. And then they'll be delivering, the foundations on the 4th building are underway, and they'll be delivering those products just about every 30 to 45 days after that, so for the 6 buildings. So each of those buildings are just kind of hopscotching on down. Everybody's hopscotching in the construction. So really by springtime or so, all of the buildings should be available for rentals. I just had a quick little floor plan, but they're 18 studio apartments, and then the balance of the 204 units are split between 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom for that. And I was worried because I didn't get the QR code memo, and AOL kind of got rid of its dial-up yesterday, so I think that was something. I was going to spell out www.
I got your back.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, but there's the QR code. Thank you, Nikki. And the preliminary rent range right now is about $1,100, $1,095 for the studio apartments, and about $1,850 for the largest studio, or for the largest 2-bedroom apartments. So they're just kind of underway and getting their process going within that. So I just wanted to run through a couple of lessons that we've learned. Like I said, workforce housing requires significant outside funding. It cannot happen without public investment, honestly, in these projects. Multiple grants create multiple complexity. Boy, have we had fun with that. And again, community and state collaboration is critical. Unbelievable support from the state and the partnerships with the state, MEDC, EGLE, State Land Bank Authority, MISTA. We couldn't think of anybody else to go to. We sort of ran the gambit of all the state agencies there as well. And project development always takes longer. You think, as we all can attest to. You can set up a timeline early on, but you might as well extend it a whole bunch. And again, implementation creates challenges that you really have to address and deal with, and requires some flexibility and planning within the project. So, but after all that, these projects are really worth the effort. It's pretty incredible that all these projects are coming online now. I think, what I have found in experiences is once you have a project, that begets more projects, and things continue to happen. You can have that big project, and it almost serves like an anchor store of redevelopment. Then everybody around it begins investing in the community as well. So hopefully this will be the start of something great. So, thank you.
Thanks, Mac.
All right, we are in the home stretch, and I know we're making you sit for a long time, but I promise it's worth it. So we're going to wrap things up towards the end with kind of a little bit more of community outlook, but also what is planning and zoning, Tammy, from Planning and Zoning? Sorry, I had to.
I really need to say before I get into that, all the collaboration that goes into these projects, it's just amazing. Every single one said, it took so many different agencies and so many different community members, and it takes a community to make all of this happen. So thank you to everyone that participated, the state for having the foresight, the county for approving the brownfield plans and having a brownfield redevelopment authority, and the townships that see the need for improved infrastructure, and just every different entity and every different individual that made a difference in housing. And that's kind of what I'm going to talk about with planning and zoning, is how can you as an individual make a difference. This first slide with my great QR code is talking about the master plan. So if you have a zoning ordinance in your community, you have to have a master plan, and your zoning ordinance has to be based on your master plan. And every 5 years, you have to review your master plan to determine if it's still valid or if you need to update it. And let's face it, 5 years ago is a lot different than today. And with the help of a grant from the state of Michigan, we are able to fund a portion of our master plan at Emmet County. So we're going through master plan process right now with a focus on housing. It was a housing grant that we received for $50,000, and we consulted with a planning consultant and a public engagement specialist, so that we will be seeking out public involvement and trying to get the feedback from our community members and our business owners and people that visit our area to see exactly what they would like to see in our community. So if you're at all able to get involved in the master plan process, feel free to do that. We love to have... Do it, yes. So we started that process about 2 months ago, but last week we had a kickoff meeting, I think 2 weeks ago. And we asked some questions of the people in the audience, which included all of our planning commission members, except one, and all of our county board of commission members, and about 40 public individuals as well participated. And we asked, what one word do you think of when you think of Emmet County? And if more than one person answered, the word got bigger, and you'll note what the biggest word is: home. So for some, we have homes, and for others, we're still trying to find that home. And so this is so important that we're having this discussion and talking about what can be done in Emmet County to make sure that everyone has a home, and they feel that same sense of home that so many of us do. And then the next question was, what is the greatest challenge facing Emmet County? And you'll see there that, again, housing rises to the top of the list. So we have been working on this in Emmet County for quite some time with our zoning ordinance. We know that housing is an issue, so we have reviewed our zoning ordinance and made some changes. But in order to continue to review our master plan, make sure that we're changing our community if it needs changed, or preserving things in our community that need to be preserved. And we're asking that you attend meetings if you're able, or if not, just take a community survey. We're going to be putting those out through the chamber, through our local media sources on the county's website, emmetcounty.org. And we're asking people to take community surveys, let us know what you would like to see in your community, if you want more affordable housing, if you want more senior housing, if you want less housing. Not only that, but what areas do you think need to change or to be preserved? It's a complete master plan, so it's not just housing, but we are definitely focusing on housing. Coming soon, also the county board invested in a zoning atlas, which is being put together by Housing North, and it's actually live now. If you went to Housing North's website, you could see the Emmet County Zoning Atlas, which is a great tool, not just for developers, but also for individuals. If you're thinking about buying a piece of land, if you go to the next slide, kind of gives you a little hint of what would be shown there. So if you dial into a piece of property on the map, you can see what it's zoned. You can see if it allows for single-family homes, multiple-family homes, duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, that sort of thing. If it's allowed just by right, if it's allowed by conditional approval, which means you have to go through a special process, or there might be additional conditions that you have to meet. For instance, we do allow for accessory dwelling units in Emmet County in those townships that have county zoning. And there are, I think, like 13 or 14 conditions that have to be met in order to have one of those. It has to fit into the community. It has to be a certain size, less than the main house on the property. It can't be used for short-term rental, which is another question we're going to be asking in those surveys. Do you think that short-term rental should be regulated, duration or location, or both? So check out that zoning atlas if you'd like. We will be hosting some public outreach sessions to just kind of share this tool with people and let them know that it's available. So if you get a chance, that is available right now already on Housing North's website. All right. Old school. Okay, so as I mentioned, we go through that master plan process about every 5 years, and we look at our master plan, see what needs to be changed, see what needs to remain the same, and we set goals for our planning commission. And some of the goals that we set in the last master plan included looking at our zoning ordinance to see where we can make changes in the housing realm. And so we did make these changes already. We increased the density in locations that have sanitary sewer. We allow for 13 units per acre if sanitary sewer is available. What we're finding is that sanitary sewer sometimes is available, but there are capacity challenges. And so we have to work with our townships, cities, and villages and work on improving our infrastructure, or at least evaluating and then seeing what improvements need to be made if we want to increase the housing stock. We do permit duplexes in most zoning districts. Again, this is something that an individual could build a duplex on their property and rent one side out, not for short-term rental again, but that's to encourage additional housing units in an area that might be able to accommodate more than just one household on a single property. Decreased minimum house size in most zoning districts, so we had a requirement of 720 square feet, and we reduced that down to 560. We're still seeing that number is pretty low. Most people are building houses that are bigger than that, but that was something that we thought could help with people that might be able to afford a home if it was a smaller home than what the minimum had been before. And then, as I mentioned, we do allow accessory dwelling units with conditions. And I'm happy to say that some of the reasons that we really enacted that was we saw the need that, people were saying, my adult child needs to move out of my house, but they can't afford a house. Well, this was an area where we were able to assist with that through zoning. You can put this accessory dwelling unit on your property. You have to have a main residence there for this to for that property to qualify, but it would allow for someone to help out another individual that might not be able to otherwise afford a home. We modified the cluster housing provisions of the zoning ordinance. It's allowed by right now instead of having to go through the Planning Commission review process, where you can cluster the houses into a smaller area, thereby not needing as much infrastructure, driveways, and roads to get to different houses down the end of the property. And then we amended the plan unit development, which is typically something that a larger developer would utilize to place housing on a piece of property. We allow density bonuses and we allow height bonuses, so that if the Planning Commission determines, with the assistance of the township reviewing a process, that housing development qualifies, they can go through this planned unit development process to seek some bonuses in density and bonuses in height, and thereby increasing the housing available in a community. Just because this approved doesn't mean it's going to be built, and that's what we have seen over and over. I mean, there's great success on some of the projects that we've seen up here. I would say probably 1 in 4 in Emmet County has actually been built. So if there's a dream to do it, it takes persistence, it takes collaboration, and it takes partnerships to make it all happen. We talked about the developments that have occurred. Some of them that haven't been mentioned. Pine Pond is a development that has occurred. That one was a collaboration as well. Jim and Ben Monte came to the township supervisor, Denny Kaiser, and I, and said, we have this dream and we need some housing and we have a piece of property, but your zoning ordinance doesn't allow us to do what we need to do and provide workforce housing for the people that work for us and the people in our community that we hear need housing. So the zoning ordinance was amended after several months of review, and they were able to realize their project, and they have at least, I believe, 20 units online now and over 140 units to be completed within about 10 years, they're hoping. Conway Commons is another. It's in Little Traverse Township. They expanded their mobile home park to allow for additional housing in their community there. The community of the Meadowlands in Littlefield Township by Habitat for Humanity for single-family homes. It's just been a great success story. The Meadows and Encore on Anderson Road in Bear Creek Township, that's a duplex development that was a multifamily development that had stalled, and it sat with some vacant land ready. It was already approved. It just had to be built, and those are almost completed now. Windsong Woods in Bear Creek Township on Howard Road, duplexes and single-family dwellings. That's in the process of being built out now, too. We approved 17 accessory dwelling units since 2022, since the change in that zoning ordinance, 38 duplex units since 2022, and 21 mobile home permits issued in 2022. And zoning permits aren't needed for mobile homes in mobile home parks, so that would be in addition to the ones that were in a mobile home community. So if you're not involved yet with the master plan process for Emmet County, please feel free to get involved. I know some of the townships, Little Traverse Township just completed their master plan. They're looking at updating their zoning ordinance currently. City of Petoskey updated their master plan, and now they're in the process of updating their zoning ordinance. So if you are in a community that has their own zoning, call their zoning administrator, email them, get involved with them, and see what you can do to look at their zoning and see what might be possible. But don't stop being involved if you can, and all together, I think we can make a difference.
I'm glad you mentioned all the communities that are reviewing or amending their master plans right now. I think the zoning atlas tool allows us to look comprehensively at all of the maps so that we can recognize the communities that can work together, that have shared boundaries or that have shared infrastructure, and really be intentional about how they're communicating and how they're projecting their land use in a way that is collaborative. Are you seeing that more in Emmet County than maybe previously or 5 years ago?
we are seeing it more, and it's required. We're not going to be able to tackle this housing issue individually. The county can't do it by itself, the townships can't do it by themselves, the cities can't do it by themselves. The state is helping, the federal government is helping. It takes these collaborations, and then it takes people that are willing to say, yes, in my backyard. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've seen over and over when a project comes in, the opposition, and occasionally someone will say, well, we do need this in our community, and the Planning Commission has sat through many meetings and listened to individuals who are very intentionally helping give their feedback, which is needed. I mean, we need to know what the community wants. We need to know what the neighbors want. We also need to realize that if we say no to every housing development that comes along, we're not going to have any housing developments, and we do need to make sure that they're placed where we have infrastructure available for those developments.
Yeah, and weighing in with public input early to say what we do want helps our voting members when they're under pressure against what somebody doesn't want. They can say, hey, this is really representative of the rest of our community that I know is positive about this because I've heard from them and they've informed this decision. And so when somebody comes in or some individuals might come in opposition, they can make a balanced decision. It's a lot of pressure to be on these voting councils, and we give them we expect a lot from them, and I think that the least we can do is give them the best information to make their decisions by. One of the other things I wanted to ask about or point out was some of those numbers when you say just because it's possible or just because it's allowed doesn't mean it's necessarily going to happen. I mean, the accessory dwelling unit conversation caused all kinds of fear. Oh my God, we're going to be overrun by these tiny cottages. And when you think about like 17 in 3 years or 4 years, it's like five a year in the whole county. These things create opportunities, but as we've heard from the entire panel, just because we want it to happen doesn't mean it's going to happen, or just because it's allowed or there's a zone for it doesn't mean it's possible. So those kind of decisions that are made at the planning and zoning level to say we'll allow it if it comes up doesn't mean that the floodgates are going to open and everything is going to be, so those numbers I think are important to remember as well.
And when a project is proposed, if it's allowed by right, then it can happen. And so it's so important to get involved in the master plan process and identify those areas where you do want certain things, not only housing, but also industry. We lost 12 and a half acres of industry or industrial property when Michigan Maple Block closed. We're not seeing a lot of industry come in, but we have a lot of little industrial type businesses, and they need a place to go too. So during the master plan process is the time to identify not only where do you want housing, but where do you want those other uses that might need to have a place in our county or your township or city. And then if housing is displacing an industry, you're going to need that industrial land somewhere else.
Yeah, I think the Atlas also helps us identify areas for incremental development. We've heard a lot about larger development projects and how difficult they are and how long they take. Some smaller scale projects that are at the neighborhood level can be really powerful for us to be able to get some of those units into our communities in a way that feels really organic and natural. I will say, though, from a financing standpoint, that's almost impossible. The financial sort of markets and the people and the developers and the investors are supporting these larger housing developments because those are the numbers they understand. And there is sort of a gap in that finance model that our community is trying to meet as well from a local advocacy standpoint. We have some community members who started in 2019 looking at a community investment fund to see if it was even possible for us to put investment dollars in our Main Street instead of into Wall Street. And we've heard there's a ton of philanthropic participation. Our community is very generous in any way that they can. But was there a way for us to involve accredited and non-accredited investors in local opportunities? And I will say, we lined up with National Community Capital with the help of the Community Foundation and the Office of Rural Prosperity, formed a 501c3, and in the fall we'll be launching a charitable investment fund. It is known, our organization is known as InvestMit. Yep, it is a group of individuals that have worked long and hard and spent a lot of time with consultants and lawyers and more lawyers and trying to figure out how to responsibly steward local investment dollars and really put that into our community in a way that's intentional with a housing focus. Go to info@investmit, make the mitten. I didn't get a QR code for you. Investmit.org and info@investmit.org. We will be launching the fund this fall. So we are in the formulative stages right now. We do exist as a 501c3, and we are trying to fill that financing gap that exists so that our communities can grow at the neighborhood level with our neighbors.
That's a lot. Please give them all a round of applause. Clearly, Dewan had it turned up for everybody else, and then I took it back. We have a couple minutes left, so I want to open it up to audience questions. Also, I want to let you know that while this is being recorded, so we'll share this from the Chamber on YouTube, all the slides will also be available to you as well, so it gives you a great opportunity to go scan those QR codes again, look deeper into those numbers, and really kind of see where you want to have more information, because I think the most critical part of being a housing advocate and being housing aware is having the information at your hand so you truly understand what it means for your community. So I will open it up to questions if there are any. I'm just going to point, and I don't mean to be rude.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Kuski. I'm the Executive Director of Community Recovery Alliance here in town. And I have a for Sarah. On the RIP's website, it says the minimum income to qualify for housing is $54,700 or something. And on your slide, it said 40. Which is a difference between $19 an hour and $26 an hour, which is a huge difference for our working people. So I just wanted clarification on that.
Yes, that's a great question, Caitlin. And so in working with Jane McKenzie from Northern Homes, so the 54,000 is the 80% AMI number. That is the number that says you're making 80% of our area median income. The project will allow you to qualify to live there if you make at least $40,000. Now, what that means for you as an individual is that you are going to be paying more than 30% of your income toward housing. So that is an individual choice that you maybe are going to balance with other, priorities in your life. But it does widen that range of folks who can qualify to live there. And based on Jane's, experience and knowledge, the minimum amount that could qualify to, who could reasonably expect to make their rent, I guess, is a good way to say that.
So thank you, because that will help us know who we can tell that they should apply.
Yeah, if you're making less than $40,000, it's not going to be the right project for you. There may be opportunities with Victory Square or other projects out there, but that's what the difference is.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's a great point, too, to what we kind of try to get through about AMI, what it's set at and what a project or development may help, let's just say, stretch, is really important. So it always pays per project to kind of look into that. Any other questions? In the back.
Melissa, so for Victory Square, are the units priced based on the household income, or are there specific units at those different levels? The slide that showed the rent based on AMI, I was a little confused.
So I was given that too from our management property. I believe that the 30% is going to be mostly targeted towards the tribal citizens and their units. I believe that the tribe is going to compensate some of that funding that would need to be put in there to raise their amount in there. I'm trying to think of what I had on my slides. I
can go back
here.
Everybody close your eyes, you're going to get sick. Oh, look, Mac's slides have so many buttons. Wow. Hang on. I'm sorry, everybody. We're going to take a nap. And as I said, Melissa jumped in so last second on this. And keep in mind, I demanded slides. I was like, you guys, I know you're not ready to give this announcement, but we need you to give this announcement. So I think that looking at it from this way, if this is what the property management director gave, the studio has 3 different ranges based on obviously 30-40% AMI, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom. And I do highly encourage for anybody with questions or interest on Victories, we don't need the floor plans. You need this one. You need to apply, and get on that email questionnaire, because the application is very, detailed, the pre-one, and it kind of gives you a little bit more information. So I know property management is working really hard to get as much information as possible. So stay in tune with the chamber too. Yes.
I just wanted to say that they're doing a really great job during this presentation. I sent it to one of my daughter's teachers, and they're already communicating, and she has applied and had a phone call while we sat here.
Round of applause for that. Wow. That's incredible. That makes my heart happy right there. Sorry, my thumb's sore from clicking through all these things, Mac. Thanks. Okay. Any more questions?
Just a quick question. Sarah Hacker, Behavioral Health Case Manager for LCDB. Is there a separate application for tribal members? Will they apply to your housing department or on that website as well?
I believe they will apply for the website there. I'm not quite sure how that's working with the tribal citizens, but I can get back with you and make sure that if there's a separate, if they want to go through housing, to do that. But I believe that is the QR code that for everybody, and then they will have the determination, the management company.
And we know that with the tribal economic development, that this is not the last project. There are more. They are coming.
Yeah, we realized that there is, a discrepancy in housing, and that there is a need for housing, not only for our citizens, but the citizens of Petoskey and their surrounding communities. So we are working towards possibly securing more housing funds and looking into that. We're always looking for more housing. So,
thank you. Any other questions so we can get everybody out of here on time? Yes.
Is there any preferential whatever being given to make sure that people that qualify for the non-market price home, that they are working for a local organization, not a remote worker working for some company in Florida?
I will say that Lofts was very, very intentional. So now that we have the QR code that anybody can go to, keeping in mind that Lofts initially was sent out in very small doses, direct from the chamber to first downtown businesses, then all businesses, and encouraging, let's just say your applications were seen a little bit quicker. That's why Sarah said there's already 150 applications, is because preference was given to local employees to make sure that those that have been waiting had an opportunity first.
I can also attest to the review criteria. So there are points given for different criteria, and if you currently live or work in Emmet County, then you get, like a half a point or something like that. I don't know exactly what the scoring criteria is. The other thing is you cannot currently own a home in Emmet County and then decide to rent it out on the short-term market or something like that, and then rent the unless you're selling that home. So there are some criteria in there to try and make sure that the project is serving people who live, work, or are retired here and want to downsize, right? You don't have to be a working individual, but you do need to, they are prioritizing that type of and there is no prohibition against somebody working remotely, right? You could work here and live here and work remotely as long as your income qualifies for that.
Yes.
Out of curiosity, so that I can share this with some of my working friends who aren't able to be here, where will the slides be posted, and when will the video be uploaded to YouTube?
I'm looking at this guy in the back. I'm going to give him a little bit of time. 48 hours enough? Perfect. Within 48 hours, the video and the slides will be on the Petoskey Chamber website, and then we also share all of this with our news media as well. So we'll make it easy to find at petoskeychamber.com, I promise.
Maybe this is a question, gentlemen from the initiative. So in your experience, similar projects like this, I'm the superintendent of the school district here. So we've got 300 units between those three
He's begging you.
I cannot nor will I speculate. But it sounds like, lots of studios, lots of one-bedrooms, right? A handful of family-sized units, which households may or may not have children.
I do. I do want to speak to that. Well, I said just in our anecdotal experience at Meadowlands, out of the 30 homes that we have sold, we have, many children and growing families. And we do have teachers, obviously, as well. But we see once a person or a couple is stabilized, they live and work in the same community. Their children go to school close to home. So this is, part of eliminating long commutes that we're seeing across county lines and things like that. If we can create a space for people to live and work, then the school enrollment remains, and you don't see that sort of attrition that goes to the larger school districts. So it's a good thing.
All right, time for one more question. Yes, ma'am.
What is the single thing that we can do as both elected officials, individuals, businesses, and residences to change the low-income housing tax credit formula? I know that we've talked with our elected officials at the state and state level, Senator Moose and newly elected Representative Fairburn. But can you tell me, is there something that we can do to advocate for more low-income housing tax credit accessibility for projects in our region?
Keep talking. Thank Mishta, because we have gotten better. We definitely have made improvements, but keep talking. And tell the stories. Tell the stories of the people you hear up here today explaining why we know in Emmet County in particular. And for those who don't know, there's a lot of people get scared at that low-income housing tax credit because they immediately equate that with those people. Please know that is your neighbor. That is the person next to you. That is all of us. So it's just really important for you as individuals, use your voice. When you go to petoskeychamber.com, you have a little section that says government. And guess what? Every legislator that you've elected is listed there. Contact them. Say, I went to the housing town hall and I learned that my community is at risk because we don't have the right structures in place for housing affordability across the spectrum, with the exception of one project right now. How do you feel about that? So just engage them as much as possible and make sure that you are, more than anything, being a housing advocate. And if you have questions, like Tammy said, if you're worried about housing projects, go to your township meetings. Listen and find out why it's needed and what it can do. And always be there to support your neighbors when they're looking for places closer to home. Do what Miranda did. Share those QR codes right off the bat with somebody that you know that's probably been on a waiting list for 18 months or is living in fear of their long-term rental being rented out from underneath them. So put it all to you. Oh, your hands are all going up, and I want to get you all out of here. Okay, 30 seconds, go.
Okay, so Kimberly Senior, Emmet County caseworker for the Salvation Army, and I work with those people. And I can tell you, these are great. It's wonderful. I'm glad that we're finally doing something. But they cannot afford these places. Yeah. What are we doing for the people that can't afford this? That $19 an hour is not realistic for the people that wash your cars and feed you and wait on you and work at your gas stations. They can't afford these. What are we doing for that?
Again, talk to your legislators, because we've got to make sure that we have structures in place that meet the counties like ours. And she's taking it from me.
Right from you. I think it is important for me to reiterate the concept of incremental development when we have maybe somebody who's overhoused or a couple who has too big of a house that can make an in-home unit or a duplex unit or a accessory dwelling unit. And it doesn't have to make these kind of numbers work. You know, what you saw today are some of the heaviest lifts from a development standpoint that exist. And we said, do that and make it affordable, right? And there's only so far you can pull that lever. So if we are able to cultivate some smaller individuals and smaller developers into small units that are populating throughout the community, we can get those overheads down and those profit margins down. And we can really create an opportunity for shared living space there.
Just add one more. Oh, wow. Go ahead. Can I just add one more thing to that? Because I think that's really important. Like, we've highlighted some really large projects, small incremental development is really important. The other thing that creating large projects like this does is creates that movement within the market, right? Somebody who's currently in a property that maybe is too small, maybe is something that they would like to move out of, but there's no place for them to go. And so that will open up some other naturally occurring affordable housing. One other thing that the Community Foundation has done is support the Community Action Agency through grant funding to help them preserve some rental housing. So there are some things, but I think the really important thing, like Lindsay was asking, those types of projects, in order to be affordable, take a lot more community investment. So we need to layer on a lot of different incentives, a lot of different things. Low-income housing tax credit is one of the most effective ways that we can create that type of housing. So it just is very difficult, but I know, and so I hear and understand your frustration with that. And I think our hope is that some of these other efforts will incrementally make an impact in that way. But I absolutely agree with you that there's more that needs to be done to serve our lowest income populations and our most vulnerable people.
Hear, hear. And I think that's a great way to end on, is that remembering that we have all of the populations to serve for our community, because that's what makes a community amazing, and that's what makes a community special like ours. So I want to thank you all for attending so much. I would also love to thank all of our wonderful speakers. Remember, you can get concert tickets from Suzanne from Ottawa Casino. Thank you to Comfort Keepers. Thank you to DTE. Thank you to you, and thank you to Alpine Media. Look for the video and the slides coming soon at petoskeychamber.com, and we appreciate you all being here.